Well then, speaking of DC, I'm sure Jeff has introduced himself to most of you all. This is Jeff Pixley. First and foremost, thank you for your service to our country.
Yes.
And how fitting that he's here on Veterans Day.
Right.
Very
right.
appropriate. He is going to speak to us tonight. Feel free to ask him questions. He would love to answer them. Just, again, he's got you on camera, so be nice.
No. Still be nice.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go
so
nuts.
thank you so much for the invitation. I am thrilled to be back in Chickasha. This city has the honor of being the first place I ever attended a protest as a free man, that is a civilian, after my retirement from the Air Force. And you may not know that because as a brand newbie to this world of activism and politics that was foreign to me as a military member, I wasn't allowed to participate in that. I saw an advertisement for the Chickasha weekly protest at the courthouse, and I drove on down. And when the appointed hour came, I realized I was alone and I didn't know what we were protesting, so I left. So that is not your fault, that is my fault. I learned an important lesson about RSVPs and social media, but I thought it was fitting that I get to come back here today on Veterans Day. I'm so glad you're having this meeting today. And I walked in and saw this and I was blown away. The generosity that's displayed in this room, the appreciation for the struggles that other folks are enduring right now that has received national attention, but those of you in the room, I'm sure, have been dialing this for a long time. Hunger is not a new crisis in our country. It is just now it's affecting some folks that normally are insulated from it. So I think this is an important step in the right direction, but maybe a reminder, time to remind ourselves that there's always hunger in our country, and generosity like this is needed across our country. Narissa mentioned the camera. I do have a camera rolling. It's mostly for my benefit, but I do sometimes post things to social media. I'm new to that. But I want to give, if anybody objects to having their face on my film, raise your hand now, because it's recording in 360 degrees. It will see all of you, and I'll know who objects to being associating themselves with me. No objections? Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure, but I'm a poll worker. I've been a poll worker for a long time, and there's people who would like to,
Accuse you of,
Well, not so much accusing, and I'm not saying anything that's anything against them. But I just don't want to take any chances with anything because I think a Democrat needs to be sitting at that table. So there's a whole bunch of rules to that. And even like when I was door knocking, I couldn't go knock on the door. I could only drop, they make little tiny rules that you have to be careful of because there's always eyes. So maybe you can believe
I will, if I can edit
Please.
you out, you will not appear, and
Sure.
I can assure you.
Yeah.
If you'll forgive me, based on the layout of the room, I'm gonna remain seated while I speak. If you have trouble hearing me, or would like to see what I look like with my back to you, which would be everywhere else, I can accommodate you in the hallway afterwards. But what I thought I would do is begin by kind of telling you my story so you understand where I'm coming from. I'll talk about what drove me to this decision, and then I will talk to you about my priorities, and then I'll hopefully leave as much time as possible for questions and answers. And you're kind to ask them to be nice to me, but the truth is I won't be a very good candidate if I can't take a pitch, so bring it. Bring it.
Yeah.
And if I don't know an answer to the question, I'm going to say I don't know, and I'm going to research it. And if I do know the answer, and I don't think you're going to like the answer, I'm still going to give you the answer because you are owed honesty from your candidates. And if that costs me your vote, well, then at least we'll have had an honest conversation about it, and you will have arrived at that position from a point of integrity. So I probably should also introduce my wife, Andrea, who's not only at my side now, but has been at my side for 34 years, including all of my military career. She did all the heavy lifting, so thank you for being here, my dear. So I grew up in Southern California. My mom and dad were both in the Air Force before I was born, and they met in the Air Force and settled in Southern California, and I was born and raised in the suburbs of California. Pretty meager existence for us, and with my mom and dad, 4 kids. They both worked full-time the whole time I can recall. Life was a struggle, but like many folks in our circumstances, I didn't really know that. I just thought it was normal that every year, every kid got a new outfit, in March, and it turned out realized later that was when the tax returns came back. So my new clothes came once a year due to tax returns. When I was young, because my parents served and my grandparents served, our houses were filled, and their houses were filled with photos of them in uniform, and my family took great pride in its service to our country. So it was pretty obvious early in my life that I would serve in some way. And then when I was probably younger than 10 years old, I saw my first fighter airplane fly by, and I said, that's what I want to do. And fortunately, I had great leaders and mentors and family members who encouraged me, instead of saying there's no way some poor kid with no connections and no money is gonna become a fighter pilot. They said, sure, you can do it, and I believed him. And for my whole youth, I pursued that and enlisted in the Air Force right out of high school because I wasn't ready for college, and it was a great call to enlist. So I spent 4 years enlisted in the Air Force, spent some time in New Mexico and Germany, married my wife Andrea, began our family, and then came to Oklahoma to go to college because we needed a place you could afford to live that had a great ROTC program, and OU fit both of those criteria beautifully. So the first time I set foot in the state of Oklahoma was the day we drove into town in January of 1995 to enroll in classes at OU.
You got my vote already. Just saying what I'm saying.
Andrew and I literally went to the student union to enroll in classes with a 2-year-old in tow. We both registered for classes. And 3.5 years later, we both graduated from OU, and I was commissioned in the Air Force and went off to pilot training down in Wichita Falls. Dream come true, check, to get to go to pilot training. And I have about 1,000 stories about the people who got me there, because it wasn't just me. That certainly wasn't my talent or good looks getting me there. It was other people helping me. But the long story short is I got to do my dream job, which is go be a fighter pilot for the Air Force. I did that in a couple different locations, back to New Mexico again. I went to South Carolina and flew there, spent some time overseas. Made a transition in 2014 to the training world, where when basic training down in San Antonio had a sexual assault scandal that rocked the Air Force in 2012, and it was a real tragedy for our country. And I happened to be stationed across town at Randolph Air Force Base doing my dream job of flying fighters, and they asked me if I could go over there and be part of fixing that broken system, and I said yes. All my fighter pilot friends thought I was insane for giving up flying to go into a business that had no flying, was incredibly high visibility, high risk, and high scrutiny. And I briefly wondered whether I was sane for doing it, but like every other decision I've made in my life, it turned out to be a great decision, because while I gave up flying to do it, I had a chance to go fix a broken organization, and more importantly, have a direct involvement in taking young people that had just raised their hand and taken an oath to our Constitution, and being the person who issued them their core values, who helped them understand what they were doing for our country and what it meant, and really began for the first time training my replacements, and I fell in love with the mission. I did that for a couple of years as a commander, and then went off to do other jobs they give to aging pilots who are no longer very useful in the cockpit. And then I had a chance to go back in 2021 to be the commander of all of basic training, so I had that whole mess as mine, and that's where all my gray hair comes from being the commander of that unit. But like when I was at the lower level of command, it was a joy to do it, because I got to see not only the amazing young people coming in and proving wrong the theory that young people today are no good. That's baloney. Kids these days are great. They just need leadership, and they need someone to hold them to a high standard, and sometimes give them a little gentle kick in the butt to do the right thing. I got to do that, and I got to work with some amazing folks who sacrifice every day, do a really, really hard job. And then lightning struck again, and I got sent to OU to be the commander of Air Force ROTC Detachment, the same place I had been a cadet back in the 1990s. And when we were given those orders, we realized that that was the universe telling us that we would retire in Norman. We had been season ticket holders. We'd always come back for games. But in the military, you can pick where you retire. I could have selected anywhere in the country, really anywhere in the world, and they would have paid for me to move there. But when we were sent here to OU and we bought that house just about a mile from campus, we decided we were going to stay. And when I made that decision, here's the transition into politics. When I made the decision for us to retire here, I already knew who we were represented by. I had come to terms with the fact that Tom Cole and James Langford and and Mark Wayne Mullen would be representing me in Washington, D.C. At the upsides of living in Norman, to me, were worth the price to pay to be represented by people I didn't necessarily agree with. So for the first year and a half or so of my command tour, I grinned and bore it like the rest of us do, being not terribly satisfied with what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. And then the November 2024 election happened, and I was a little bit shaken. But we'd been through it before, 2016, and we got through that, and I served on active duty during that time. And then on the morning of February 15th of 2025, it was a Saturday, I woke up early, as I often did, and read the news. And overnight, the president had fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, a fellow F-16 pilot and a fine officer and a general. He had fired Admiral Lisa Franchetti, who ran the Navy, for no good reason.
Right.
And most alarmingly to me, he fired the lead lawyers for all the services that make sure the orders that come down to troops like me are constitutional, lawful, and should be followed. And sitting there in my chair waiting for Andrea to wake up, I began imagining what that might mean for our country, what it might mean for me in uniform, what it might mean for the people that I had just trained, for the lieutenants I was about to commission that May out of OU, and the possibilities were pretty terrifying. And I realized that morning that I had no choice, that I was going to have to retire from the Air Force, because I couldn't sit on the sidelines and be outside of politics. When being inside the military, despite it being my dream job and having one of the best jobs a colonel can have, I couldn't be part of the solution. I just couldn't sit by and let it happen. So when Andrea got up, I said, "Honey, I have news. We're retiring." And then I called my boss on Monday morning. He worked down in San Antonio. I said, "Boss, I'm out, and I'm going to go find a way to contribute to our country in another way." From that point until the time I decided to run for office, were just a few days, because when I said I was going to retire, my mindset was I need to be part of the solution. I need to go to protests. I need to go organize. I need to be active in the Democratic Party, things I wasn't allowed to do in uniform. And I asked myself, who can I help get elected? And I live in Norman, which is a great blue dot in Oklahoma. Everybody that represented me, my state House member, my state senator, our mayor, all these people were fantastic people who shared my values. The first place I got to where there was a giant gap in my values and the way someone was upholding their oath was Congress. The two options were Tom Cole and Mark Wayne Mullen. And while I am an arrogant fighter pilot, I knew that jumping straight into politics with no background in history and trying a statewide race in Oklahoma probably wasn't the way to go. So Mark Wayne was spared my wrath. Tom Cole is not. Tom Cole has, despite being a good guy by all accounts, everybody says he's a really nice guy, and having a scotch and a cigar with him is a lot of fun. I don't consider that to be something that is that important when it comes to public service. And if he wants to be a nice guy, that's great. He can do that as a civilian. So I decided I was going to run for office. And I asked my friends if I was crazy. And they said, yes, but you should still do it. And for 200 days, I was still on active duty, because it takes time for the bureaucracy to play out and for me to get my replacement, flown in to take over my detachment. And those were honestly the longest 200 days of my career. And that includes being deployed and separated from my family. It was so hard to have decided to do this, but be forced by the rules, very good rules, but frustrating rules, to keep my mouth shut and be a good soldier. What did being a good soldier look like besides screaming into my pillow every night? It was walking through my office spaces and identifying anything that represented improper ideology and removing it. So I removed a 3x5 foot collage entitled "Women in Air Power," which was just photographs of women from my detachment over the last 50 years or 70 years. It was on display, and it was now illegal. So I had to take that down. I had to walk down the hallway and take down a recruiting poster that featured the Tuskegee Airmen. And if you don't know who the Tuskegee Airmen are, you should. I had to take that down because the Secretary of Defense and the President of the United States said those were improper ideologies for celebrating those people for their immutable characteristics. I'm a good soldier, so I took it down. I donated the collage of the photos to the aviation office, other side of campus, so it wasn't in DOD space. And the Tuskegee Airmen poster is hanging in my office in my house right now, waiting for the time when I can give it back to the Air Force so they can put it on display where it belongs. Those 200 days were really tough. But it gave me time to think. It gave me time to research. It gave me time to contemplate how I would tackle this, whether it was really winnable or doable. And I came to the conclusion that it was going to be a hard race. And despite not telling many people, I did confide in some close to me about what I thought I would do. Almost everybody said it's impossible to beat Tom Cole. This is a deep red state. It's Tom Cole's seat. He's beloved. And I reject not the fact that he's been in office since I was, had brown hair. The fact is, we have fallen for a trap. We've fallen for a trick, calling this a deep red state or calling it Tom Cole's seat or saying this unwinnable. Those are self-fulfilling prophecies. And as Democrats in the state of Oklahoma, we have been tricked into saying those things, and that drives down voter participation. It drives down people's enthusiasm. It forces people to go do crazy things. It's not crazy. It makes sense. People registering for another party just so they can have a voice in the outcome of an election. We've done that to ourselves, and I'm not assigning blame. I'm just saying that's what happened. So during those 200 days, I thought through when the first time I burst out on the scene, what am I going to say? So here's what I'm saying. This is a winnable race. It's going to be hard. R plus 19, I need 44,000 people who voted for Tom Cole last time to vote for me this time. And that is going to only happen by going to places like this and places that are less friendly than this, making eye contact with them, telling them where I stand, what I believe in, what drives me, trying to demonstrate that they can trust me, that the Democrats, that the boogeymen that they've been tricked into believing are the other problem is not me. So I'm 72 days into my campaign. I started with a $100 check I wrote to my campaign so I could open a bank account and a Facebook account with 0 friends because I wasn't a social media guy because social media is poison. It's necessary evil in politics. So it's been a couple months. We have some steam going. I'm still working on name recognition. I'm still trying to convince folks that this is winnable. But almost every interaction I've had with people who are reasonable has been enthusiastic. People want to see change in Washington, D.C. They don't have faith that the folks in Washington, D.C. have our best interests at heart. And when it's specific to Tom Cole, they are frustrated just as I am that a person who brags about how powerful he is, being the chair of the Appropriations Committee, somehow is behind passing terrible laws and then expects us to thank him for saving us from his choices by funding the National Weather Center or some other thing where he slipped something in last minute to save us. That's cynical politics. It's unacceptable. And I'm not impressed by someone who does wrong for the rest of the country and then comes in and saves his own job by writing a check or getting an earmark cut in. So that's why I'm running. I'm not running because I need the money. I'm a retired colonel. My pension's pretty solid. I don't have to work. In fact, I should be in the garden right now helping get ready for the winter. I'm not doing this because I want a career in politics. I don't. My goal in life was to retire and enjoy retirement with what I have left with my wife. My kids are all gone. I miss much of their upbringing because I was gone. I wanted to do that, but I feel duty bound to do this for at least some period of time. I don't know how many terms. If I can win, first things first. We're going to win the first term. I would think running again would make sense after that if I'm successful, if I'll be selected. But I can't imagine spending more than a couple terms in office because my goal is to set the example about doing good policy, living my values, letting the voters decide whether I belong in office, not letting a giant war chest or millions of dollars decide that. But most importantly, mentoring and guiding and bringing up the generation behind me to replace me. Younger people than me who have a real vested interest in what happens 50 years from now or 100 years from now when I'm gone. We are not doing a great job of that right now in the center of the country. On the periphery, we're doing a pretty good job. There's some real talent in other places. It's not here, not yet, but I know it exists here. We just haven't given them the opportunity, partially to the reasons I talked about before about holding ourselves back. So what do I want to do when I get to Washington, D.C.? I have 4 things you'll see on the back of my card if you've already previewed it. The number one most important thing listed there is restore constitutional balance. Our Constitution is wildly out of balance. the presidency has become far too powerful, and this isn't a President Trump thing only. He's the worst about it. He's abused it more than any other president in history. But this has been happening for a long time by a Congress who advocates this responsibility for political expediency, and a Supreme Court that is well, the Supreme Court is corrupt. The Supreme Court has been corrupted. I'm not afraid to say it.
That's my report.
I just want to make sure I chose the words just right. The Supreme Court is corrupt.
Yes.
So the other priorities under that are all important, but if I go to Washington, D.C., and we strike out working on affordability by raising the minimum wage and other things like that, they're focused on putting money in people's pockets, and we don't fix the imbalance at the constitutional level with the balance of power, checks and balances, and real oversight, then we will continue to suffer under an economy that's built for corruption, that is a patron economy, where only if you go to the president in genuflect do you get your company off the ground. And that's not an exaggeration. We're seeing what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now, and there are a lot of people that are enjoying this because it's a fast track to riches for them. We have to fix that. It's going to be hard. There are loopholes that have existed for years that we have avoided the pitfalls of, because for our history, really our founding fathers expected us to elect people that weren't scoundrels, and if they proved themselves to be scoundrels, they trusted us that we would get rid of them, and we have failed to do our part. Part of that is Citizens United and money in politics that has restrained our ability to act, but we need to take action now. So fixing the constitutional imbalance is number one. After that is empowering American families. That's everything from minimum wage to universal health care. I am for universal health care. I can give you a whole speech on that if you want. Every person in this room, every person in this city, every person inside our borders deserves to be alive. If they have an illness that can be prevented, or have an injury that can be healed, they deserve to have that injury healed or that disease treated. And that's an easy call, and we can do it. We can afford it. Anybody says we can't is trying to trick you. It's not true. We can definitely afford it. We just need to get rid of the profit-taking insurance companies who make their money denying care.
Yep.
After that is national security. As a military guy, you think that would be higher on the list. I think it's where it belongs, because without economic prosperity in our country, we're not going to be able to field a military force that's capable of defending us. But a really important thing that we've let go is our place on the world stage. We have walked away from the moral high ground on the world stage for reasons that are difficult to articulate in a forum this short, but I'll tell you that we need to reinvest in the Department of State, let diplomacy, real diplomacy, the hard kind that requires compromise and using our living our values to prove what right looks like on the world stage. If we do that well in places around the world, we drive down the need for the Department of Defense to go into action. We still need a robust national defense, we really do, for lots of reasons, but there's a wild imbalance there. We need to invest in the Department of State. And the last one is about, basically it's about treating every person in this country with dignity and respect. Every person, every human deserves dignity and respect in this country. We have an unlevel playing field in many ways. The things we've done in our government historically and presently to keep some people down, to let marginalized communities remain marginalized, is something we need to tackle. We are not living our values if we don't. And when I get to Washington, D.C., every program and every law that we pass will have to include taking into account how does it affect those people who've been left out of our society so far, who have been marginalized or vilified for some reason, whether it's a cultural reason, religious reasons, or otherwise. I don't care. It's not right. Every human being deserves dignity and respect. So that's what drives me. So that's my 17-minute and 55-second who I am and why I am. I would love to take questions from you about any topic. And like I said, if I don't know the answer, I won't pretend I do, but I'll always be honest with you.
What'd you get your degree in?
I got my degree in sociology. And the reason I did that, you think that, well, he clearly wanted to get into politics, understanding how society worked. is the path to that. That's not at all the case. In fact, when I got to OU, they said you need to study engineering if you want a scholarship. I said I don't think I'd be very good at engineering. I want to do sociology. They said, well, we guess you're not going to get a scholarship then. But I got a scholarship anyway, and all my friends who took that engineering, well, not all of them, most of my friends who became engineers got C's, and they became engineers in the Air Force. I got A's and became a pilot in the Air Force, which is what I wanted. So, but it served me very well because I think I understand the world pretty well because of the training I got on how, what makes our society tick. I never took psychology, but I am a student of human behavior, and I have an MBA that I got later in my career, and I studied national defense at National Defense University in Washington, D.C., and got effectively another MBA focused on the defense industrial complex. So I'm an expert. I have expertise in things like launching rockets and building ships and those other things that actually may come in handy with Tinker inside my district.
Oklahoma State also has a ROTC program, and they offer the same.
That's right. So, okay, I'm going to take your question, but this is, once you get to know me, you're going to know I have a story for everything. I'll make this brief. The only reason I sit here today, a retired colonel in the Air Force, is because the people at Det 675 at OU were bad at math. And here's what I mean by that. When I applied for my scholarship for the Air Force, I applied to OU, OSU, and Colorado. OSU and Colorado said no. OU said, yeah, we'll take your application. And I found out a year later, after I waited a year for my scholarship results, to find out that OU had miscalculated my high school GPA. They should have said no too. They should have said no. I should have been rejected from college, not from college, I got into all three schools, but the Air Force, I shouldn't have gotten in, only because this staff sergeant was bad at math. Did they let me apply? And by the time I found out I didn't get the scholarship, we were so committed to going, we said, heck with it, we're going anyway.
That makes me feel better.
There you go, there you go. Yes, ma'am.
That's why your engineer friends were your C. Okay, you said you want to restore constitutional balance. My question is, how would you do that? My two areas of concern are with SCOTUS and with the Department of Defense.
Yeah.
So what idea or what concept of a plan do you have for?
So SCOTUS is the harder of the two because the House of Representatives has almost no role to play directly in this in the Supreme Court. That doesn't mean we're not influential, but that's largely the Senate gets a chance to make a difference there. There are a handful of folks on the Supreme Court who nature will take its course and some of the corruption will die off. But in the next 3.5 years, if that happens in the next 3.5 years, I expect 30-year-old people from the Heritage Foundation to be placed in. So I would advocate for, and this is not a congressman's role, but I would advocate for in Supreme Court a externally enforceable code of ethics. Right now, their code of ethics in the Supreme Court is internally managed, meaning Justice John Roberts is the person who decides whether something is ethical or not. And clearly, that system's not working. Reference Clarence Thomas's boondoggles and RV fiascos. So
well, it's John Roberts. His whole, since he was a young lawyer, this is his plan, Project 25.
Yes.
But he has the demeanor where it doesn't look like it. But he's playing a game. He's not playing a game. He's working a plan.
That's correct. So it'll be hard to impose that on them because they will claim the separation of powers is absolute. You can't touch me. I think American popular dissent could help influence that. There is always a chance for, and this applies to the DoD as well. True oversight. When you bring people in for a congressional hearing, and swear them in, if they don't answer questions, that's contempt of Congress. If they are combative or lie, then they should be prosecuted. The sergeant at arms should haul them away and hold them. That's called inherent contempt. It's existed officially for a long time, never been exercised. I think.
Say that we're not good at. I mean, there's things even internationally. What's going on right now? It's against law.
Yes. So you didn't say the words, but I will tell you what I think you're talking about is the completely illegal and immoral bombing of the boats in the Caribbean and Atlantic Pacific. And as a guy who trained for what's called maritime interdiction, I trained and I became qualified to bomb boats. I can assure you, had I been given those orders, I would have refused those orders, and I'd probably be in jail right now. No, people will go to jail. People will go to jail. Congress we will have to act, and there's no statute of limitations on murder and using our tax dollars to murder. And they may be drug smugglers. Don't get me wrong. I'm not excusing drug smugglers. Drug smuggling's bad. Okay. I'm saying that you get a trial, you have to present evidence. And no more proof is needed except the fact that there were 2 people who survived it. And what did we do with them? We sent them back to their home countries because we knew that their stories wouldn't line up. It's disgusting.
Who would get it? Who would it be? Would it go to the top where it should because he's the one that gave the orders?
It has to. So I don't. The president does not. I think the Secretary of Defense. The Secretary of Defense would be the person. The president can pardon himself. So he says. My genuine belief is there will be no accountability because pardons will be issued, and so far we have not shown the backbone in our government to hold people accountable for fear of being accused of hating the military. Right? Imagine the world where the Democrats are the ones hauling some poor sergeant into a court, yet the Secretary of Defense gets away with it. They've created a really tough problem, but doesn't mean we can't take a moral stand on it. I think we need to be vocal. We need to not relent. And every time they're about to get something they want, just like Tommy Tuberville did with the confirmation of generals, he held confirmation of generals over his pet projects. Well, my pet project is genuine oversight and accountability. So when they need something from me, I'm going to say, "What have you done for me lately? Where's the accountability I need on this issue?" And I'll be and I think when we win in a blue wave, and let's be honest, if I go to Congress, it means I'm part of a blue wave, right? I'm not going to be the guy who goes alone. I'm going to be part of that. I'm going to be part of the new majority. That new majority is going to be reanimated, even if there are some folks that have fallen for the trap of being pragmatic and fearing for their reelection chances. I don't fear my reelection chances. What I fear is not doing my job and looking in the mirror one day and realizing that I failed to uphold my oath of office. And this is another soapbox I'll get on for a second, but I'm most passionate about it. It's hard for me to keep my control when I talk about it. I spent 35 years of my life sacrificing for this country. She spent 34 years of her life sacrificing for our country by me being gone, raising kids without me. My kids moved 9 times, went to all these schools, had an absent father, watched me fly off and go into combat. It offends me that people do not hold their oath of office when what I did to uphold mine caused all that pain. And I'm one of the lucky ones. There are people that I flew with that never came home. They paid the real sacrifice, and Tom Cole not upholding his oath of office is offensive to me. And every person in Congress who's not doing their job, that doesn't understand what it meant when they did this, they have to go. They have to go.
Votes first.
Yeah. Sorry, long answer to a short question.
No, totally right.
Yes,
Right, because I'm sorry. The other part of that, what do you think about the Department of Defense? And
Well, the DoD's budget is too big. I'm not afraid to say that. They just went from $785 billion to $1 trillion in a world where we have retreated from the world stage. If we were still doing what we did in the 1990s, $1 trillion might make sense. If we are really going to just focus on our shores and let Poland worry about Poland and Ukraine worry about Ukraine, $1 trillion makes no sense whatsoever. So we need to adjust the budget. I alluded to oversight. We need to really hold them accountable. The DoD has never passed an audit, and people say that because they think an audit is easy. No, an audit of the largest bureaucracy in the world would be incredibly difficult. It'd be like, it's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. Just when you're about to get done, you got to start again. That's how an audit would be. But the American people need to know how their money is being spent.
How do we get that done? Those are the answers.
Yeah,
a lot of people know, but how do we put the teeth in those answers?
Yeah, so legislation that makes it a law that you have to do that, and then that's when you stop confirming secretaries and undersecretaries. That's when you stop letting ships get built. That's when you hold their feet to the fire, hit them where it hurts, which is the pocketbook, and make it and hurting them politically. That's the way to do it. And we haven't done that in my lifetime. I don't know that we've done that. And I'm no spring chicken. Yes, ma'am.
So lucky me and Tom Paul are from the same tribe. And I'll see him when I get tribal events. Like we have a big festival in Tishomingo. We're from the Chickasaw tribe. But I don't talk to him for the obvious reasons. You know, he runs on, you know, he's native, and so does Mark Wayne Mullen, you know, but you know, he's Cherokee, just like Kevin Stitt. Anyways, so my question is like, what would you do for like Native Americans and like, you know, from the state of Oklahoma, because we are a big Native state.
You bet. The first thing I'm going to do is listen, because I'm not Native American. And I know I don't understand what matters most. Well, that's not true. I do understand what matters most.
Yeah.
The word, it's one word, it's sovereignty.
Yeah.
That's what matters most. I'm
That's
smart
what
enough to
they're
have
trying
figured
to
that
take
out.
away.
They're trying to interfere with that. And I had my first meeting with your nation, with a representative from your nation. I've already had a meeting with them. And actually, I reached out to the governor's office first. I want to talk to the governor, and they said, no, why don't you talk to a lower level guy? And I said, okay, I guess.
He's a pretty busy
but
guy.
he is. I gave it my shot. I was going alphabetically.
Yeah.
And we had a great meeting, and what I told them was, because I don't have direct personal experience, I have a lot of learning to do. The sovereignty issue is the first thing that came up. The consequences of the McGirt decision are fresh on people's mind, and how that's being attacked and implemented.
That affects us here directly in Chickasha,
Right.
too.
Here's my belief. Number one, because sovereignty is sovereignty, when we're dealing with all of our native nations, listening to what they need and understanding their concerns is priority number one. Priority number two is making sure that while they are sovereign nations, they exist within the context of our larger state and American society. So if I do these things well, they have an opportunity to thrive. If we continue to fail at these things, especially economic failure, we're making it harder for them. And what's the number one revenue source for our native tribes, or our native nations, right? And so when excess income, which is what people use when they're doing it responsibly, is gone, it adversely affects them. So we owe our native nations a booming economy and context for them to exist. That allows them to fulfill their priorities. We also owe them, we need to be good stewards of our land. The land and water that is to us is a resource, but to them is part of the family. We owe them.
Water is our greatest medicine.
Yes.
That's correct. That's correct. And we are not doing a good job of that now as a nation, as a country, and our how much we care for this planet. The Democratic Party does pretty good on this, but we're struggling right now to get a foothold because money speaks louder than words. But when it's not going to. There's analysis now showing maps of our country 50 years in the future and where the water shortages will be. A post-apocalyptic hellscape is not where I want my grandchildren to grow up. Right. They should be able to live right here in Oklahoma, not have to flee toward the Canadian border to have clean water. And the native people that we have displaced from their land should be able to stay here or go where they desire, in a place that they can raise their families and live their culture and traditions. What else? Thank you for the question.
Start with a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is more of one of the things that Democrats are dealing with in general is the idea that we are here they call us the demon crowds.
Yeah, or the woke ones.
Right. And we worship Satan. I mean, God knows it gives us all this stuff.
Yeah.
How do you handle? Do you have a religion? And are you ready? I mean, it's one of those. I totally believe in the separation of church and state, but right now I'm thinking the only way we win anything is if we have white Protestant men, straight white Protestant men running for everything.
I know it's a challenge. What I do, and in fact, my first week of campaigning, I was at the Cleveland County Fair in Norman. And I was literally, it was even before I came to Chickasha for my one-man protest. And I was standing at the booth. That was all my fault. I was standing at the booth, and the booth had Democrat signage on it. So there was no secret who I was, and I would watch people walk past me, and I could tell by their body language whether or not they wanted to talk. I want to talk to everybody, but I'm smart enough to know when someone walks by and they become visibly angry that I exist, I'm like, I'm not that one passed. Catch the next one. I'm sure. So here's how I've personally tackled it. And I think more and more as this grows and as I get volunteer support and something happens, I've had a podcast or something, and suddenly everybody does know my name. I will get more people wanting to come talk to me. They may come angrily to talk to me. Right now, I don't get trolled on Facebook at all, which tells me I'm not working hard enough. But when I'm just honest with folks. I tell them my background experience, the same story I gave you. If they decide to open the door and they want to quiz me on what my religion is, generally what I say is that my parents were Lutheran. I was raised and baptized Lutheran. I attend the Unitarian Church in Oklahoma City, and that's where I feel at home. And I try to live my life every day in a way that would make my parents proud. That's not a satisfactory answer to some people. Some people are like, I'm reading between the lines here and I think you're the devil. And I'm like, well, and so this is kind of to your point. One of the reasons that, and I hate that this is true, but I believe it is. In fact, another story from that will make this point for me. I met a man in that interaction those first few weeks. He was one that walked by and kind of gave me the look like he didn't want to talk, and I kind of reeled him in. I said, you may not want to talk to me, but if I win, I have to know what you care about, so help me do a good job of representing you. So he reluctantly came and talked to me. We spent what felt like 10 minutes. It may have been short, but it sure felt like a long conversation. As he was, quizzing me and trying to understand where my head was, and he started from the boogeyman point. I'm the boogeyman, and there's a problem. How could I possibly be a Democrat? And after a good long conversation where I was just being myself and being honest, he said, if you were running against Tom Cole as a Republican, I might vote for you. And I said, sir, don't you think I know that? I'm a middle-aged white guy that spent 35 years in the Air Force flying fighters. I could pass for a Republican. I could pull it off easy. But the problem is I've read the Republican platform and I've read the Democratic platform in this state. One's a hate document full of conspiracy theory and craziness, and one's one of love and taking care of your neighbor and all the things my parents taught me when I was being brought up. And it's not even close contest, because I could have pretended to be a Republican, but I would have been a terrible Republican because I don't, the things that they value are not the things I do. So that will probably cost me some votes, but the conversations I've had that include my background, they see me as kind of an acceptable version. I'm not Nancy Pelosi, I'm not Jasmine Crockett, and both those are fine leaders who I support, who I think are great folks for their district specifically. Nobody's asked me I was around Mamdani yet, actually, except tonight. The truth is, my goal is to understand everybody in our district and represent them the best I can without violating my core values. And if I'm asked to violate my core values, I won't. If that costs me my job, then it costs me my job, and I'll go work in the garden with Andrea and finally grow my hair out.
Thank you. That was an excellent answer.
Thank you.
So universal health care.
Yes.
Exactly what are your plans to tackle that?
I advocate for essentially a Medicare for all system. Getting rid of the middleman insurance companies, opening it up to every person who's present in our country, and the reason I can say I say from I think a point of authority on this, not having run an insurance company, but having been a customer of a socialized medicine system for the entire time I was in the Air Force. I had free health care for me the whole time I was in, free health care for my family. Wife, 3 kids, raised up in 35 years of service. I paid less than $30 out of pocket that whole time. And that was for her meals when she was hospitalized, when we had our first kid, back when you got to be hospitalized to have a kid. And people sometimes mistake the free health care that military gets as some kind of prize for your service. That's not what it is at all. We take care of our military members because I can't be in the fight unless I'm healthy. I can't fly that airplane unless I'm exceptionally healthy. And I can't focus on the mission if I have to worry about my financial situation because of bills with medicine, or if my wife's sick or my kid's sick. My wife can't contribute to the military community and be the leader that she needs to be to keep our friends and family sane while we're all deployed if she's worried about the kids being sick, or if she's sick herself with something that's easily preventable. Everything I just said is true in the civilian world. If we value Americans' ability to be productive members of society, if we need them out in the fields growing things, or we need them in factories building things, we need them to be healthy. So there's a capitalist reason for keeping people healthy. Add to that it's actually cheaper. It's cheaper to take the middlemen out, give people the health care they need. And it doesn't mean that necessarily a procedure is much cheaper, because doctors are going to need to get some money for their jobs. Being a surgeon, that's a high specialty. But no middlemen taking out money. And most importantly, preventative medicine is inexpensive. Emergency medicine, after not getting preventive medicine, is very expensive. And if everybody has health care, And by the way, get time off from their bosses to go take care of healthcare needs. That's paid time off for healthcare. They won't get as ill. So we're a cheaper society to have, cheaper employees to have, longer life expectancy, longer time productive. It is a tall order. It's easy to say. It's harder to do because there are huge moneyed interests. This is the last thing they want. So they make up reasons not to do it. They'll throw examples out like, oh, I dated a girl in Canada and her dad had to wait in long lines for his hip replacement. Okay. So if your choice is to wait in line for a procedure or never get the procedure, which would you choose? Because right now we have a system that encourages people never to get care or they can't afford it. And what's getting ready to happen in January if you're on ACA premiums right now, they are breaking the system on purpose.
Yep.
They're breaking it on purpose because they hate it and they couldn't do it the right way, which would have been to legislate it away. So they're going to destroy it, and a lot of people are going to suffer. So why is that good news? Well, it's actually terrible news in the short term, but in the long term, we are going to hit a tipping point where the American people, and not just people in this room, your friends who would never go into this room, are going to be affected by this adversely, and they're going to start shaking their fist. And I don't think they're going to be, the Republicans are going to be able to point at immigrants or brown people and say it's their fault. It's not their fault.
Sure they can.
Well, they try, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work because it's not the emergency medicine being provided to people who have a life, limb, or eyesight problem in presenting a hospital with no insurance. That's the immigrants, the undocumented folks who get treated. That's what it is. That's this tiny number.
Yep.
The rest of the people who get treated are under the current system are
Those are the big
entitled to
booty
it.
men. They just do that.
They do.
People gotta learn that.
They do, and you know, it's a balancing act that I certainly have to play, right? So as a politician, my job is to find a way to appeal to people while maintaining my
That's the
integrity.
word, healthcare.
So healthcare is a way, but I'm gonna have to be careful how I do it. But so I may not be able to be the flamethrower that you can be. I detect this as a flamethrower. I don't know if you know.
She's a flamethrower.
I got the feeling that I picked the right spot. We need flamethrowers too to make the point to people, so they are mad. We also need people who can speak about policy, who can be who can lay things out in terms that the average American can understand, and help them not be afraid of the thing they don't know. Because when you're talking about someone's pocketbook during times of already struggling, any change is terrifying. If you're barely putting food on the table, me saying, "Well, don't worry, it'll end up being cheaper," I'm like, "Prove it. Yeah, show me the money." Right? This is what they want to say. So the healthcare problem, it's definitely solvable. I don't know how long term, how quickly we can do it, but I think we may be at a tipping point. The unfortunate part is kind of like this. How many people are going to have to be hurt before we do something about it? The capitulation that was mentioned before by the Senate is a good example. There were a lot of people being hurt by the shutdown, and then we didn't get the payoff because they didn't follow through. And that's a nuanced argument. I'm not here to debate that. I wasn't in the room. I don't know what the policies are going to be, and I don't know what the House is going to pass tomorrow. But my expectation is it's going to be underwhelming and disappointing.
Do you have words of encouragement for those of us who feel that we've already reached a tipping point?
So yeah, this is going to sound self-serving, so forgive me if it does. But I wake up every morning now more excited about being alive and an American than I have in a long time. Because I feel like what I'm doing has a purpose, is going to make a difference. Now, my job in the Air Force, I've made a difference, I know, but it was always that world where you never see the payoff, you never get to see the results of your labors. I think this moment we're in politically, all of us in this room have the opportunity to see the payoff of our labors, and to me that's exciting. It motivates me to get up in the morning. It's why I love being in rooms like this. My campaign manager hates it when I spend time doing things like this. Sorry, Justin. Because I should be on the phone right now asking for money, because the real thing is to drive this campaign is money. I need millions of dollars to beat Tom Cole, and I start with $100. I'm not quite there at the millions yet. But I'm motivated every day because this is so important, and my advice to you is remember that nothing changes without us, and we know what happens if we just sit back.
Can we donate through your...
You can, yes. So that's a great question. I will. I didn't even plant that question, but I do have a linked account on ActBlue on my website. If you go to my website there's a button that says donate. Please don't donate more than $3,500. That's the limit. And so seriously, keeping the lights on a campaign, it requires donations. I'm gonna have to fundraise outside the state, honestly, to make this work. But if you don't think your donation is sufficient enough to make a difference, I promise that's not true. A recurring donation of a few bucks that is for the rest of the campaign is the kind of thing that helps us forecast, helps me buy another stack of these. This is like the last of my stack. I ordered new ones today. These will be collector's items because we changed the design. So I'll sign these if you need me to before you lock up. There's ways to donate, but here, if you can donate, that'd be amazing. I would love that. The most important thing that you can do for me right now is tell every person you know who cares about the future of our country, whether or not they live in Chickasha or in Grady County, anywhere on your Facebook group or your personal network, tell them there's hope. There's a chance that we're no longer going to sit here and take it, and there are great candidates in Oklahoma that are vying for this office, and we're going to change the world. And what happens maybe unlike, this is going to sound terrible again, sorry Justin, nobody in California cares about Stephanie Bice and whether she is reelected or not. They've never heard of her. Everybody in the country should care about Tom Cole because he is the seat of one of the most powerful committees in the country, and he's mismanaging it, he's mishandling it, he's abusing it, and people in California and Florida and New York should care about this campaign. So when you spread the word saying this election matters, what Jeff Pixley needs is name recognition. He needs personal endorsements. Like, I met him, he seems cool. And now I'm gonna really, my wife's gonna kick me on the table. I say this. If that's not me, because you've had a chance to meet me and Mitchell Jacob, if after meeting both of us, you're like, no, Mitchell's my guy, awesome. Do that for him. Tell people about him. Because one of us is gonna beat Tom Cole. Because if Mitch somehow beats me, he won't, but if he does, do you know what my job is after that point? To help him beat Tom Cole, and I'll make that my life's work through November, because he's on my side. Yes, ma'am.
So what makes you the better candidate to go against Tom Cole?
I've already spoken to a little bit. I think when Republicans look at me, my background and history, I think I have. Mitch might not have, but that's in their eyes, so I can't say for sure that's true. That's the feeling I have. I think my expertise in the Department of Defense, not only on my operational experience, but my expertise in the military-industrial base, the shipbuilding, rocket building, all stuff that matters at Tinker, that matters down at Fort Sill. I think those things mean when I hit the ground in Washington, D.C., despite having to learn where my office is and which elevator takes me where, the ability to hit the ground running and make a difference on staff, ask hard questions, provide real oversight. I'm not going to need a long runway to get spun up and be excellent with a 2 year. Yes, sorry.
I see what you did.
I know. I almost highlighted it, but I decided that'd be too cheesy. Thank you for helping me though. I think that's the advantage I have, but I'm not being sarcastic. I'm not blowing smoke. If Mitchell is also a veteran. He's a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. There's probably some expertise that he has from his law school degree that may give him an upper hand when he gets to Washington, D.C. And I have nothing bad to say about lawyers, having had my family saved by a lawyer who came to our defense when I was falsely accused of a crime. I can tell that story over an adult beverage one time.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
My question is, how do as a leader, not only in Washington, but as a leader here in Oklahoma, expand and address the issue of the racial equities and even just visibility? I was in the military. One of my jobs back in the early 70s was a racial relations NCO, and I know that we've stopped doing a good job in terms of politically, educationally, in terms of highlighting the power of racially inclusive environments.
Yeah.
What will you do to expand that as part of your, should you, and when you win, when you win, in terms of those persons around you to give you the proper information
Yeah, that's
Make things happen.
a phenomenal question. I was in a meeting this morning in Norman, and I was telling the story of the Air Force gives every officer a report card every year. It's called a performance report. And my 2021 performance report, the bottom section that's written by and signed by the general, my highest boss's boss's boss. Those words in that small box are meant to be the most impactful ones that suggest, hey, this guy's going, this gal's going places. And the top line started with these words: DEI warrior. The next line said, integrated transgender troops into basic military training with expertise and dignity and respect. And those, at the time they were written, were the highest praise you could get. And those catapulted me to I didn't become a general, and which is fine, I can live with it, I'll get over it someday. But that was extremely high praise at the time. Any officer who had that on their performance report today would be fired for those words, right? And at my retirement party, I considered taking that document and blowing up to poster size and circling it and having my picture made in front of it, because I'm proud of being part of an organization that has, the United States Air Force was early to integrate, and we spent years trying to find ways to be inclusive. The accusations of quotas and other ways of giving people unfair advantage are nonsense. I sat on promotion boards. We went to great lengths to make sure that we were making sure our decisions were based on merit, but we always asked ourselves after the results were in, but before we published them, we would take a look and say, how did we do? Does this slate of selected colonels or selected chief master sergeants or these commanders, does this reflect our force? And if it doesn't, we'd ask ourselves the hard question. Is there a bias baked into this? Did we get this wrong? Are we creating is there an opportunity ceiling that we're not aware of? Yes, we do that, and we damn well should, and every organization ought to do that. We have fallen away from that because somebody weaponized the word woke, which I considered a compliment and still do. Someone calls me woke. No, first thing I say is define it and thank you, because I consider myself a very woke guy.
Yeah.
What I will do, so I have. The example I try to give folks, since I'm at OU, I use football examples and whenever I can, because that's the language they speak. And there are some folks who think that merit is all that matters. If the number one candidate should always be selected, and you should never give someone the job if they're not the most qualified. The most qualified is not a thing. I'm sorry to tell you, that's a subjective thing. When you're talking about someone's performance, leadership, charisma, speaking ability, athleticism, those are all subjective in some way or another. Athleticism, even that, although it can be quantified, there are elements of it that are subjective. What is good and what is great? When you say only the most qualified get selected, that is code for people I like, people I value, my subjective standards be applied to everybody else. Because I got to be in rooms when they selected colonels and officers to be commanders, what I saw in the Air Force was that after we went through the process of looking at people's records and determining who was ready for the next position, we always had more ready for the job than we had openings for those jobs. Every promotion, we had to cut people off. So what that told me was we were so deep with talent. Every person that we were considering was excellent. You don't make it to 20 years in the Air Force and get considered for command unless you are excellent. You've already met the threshold of awesome. It is completely defensible and preferable to make sure that the team you build that get those very rare opportunities is one that's reflective of the force for reasons not only of people to look up to you and say, hey, I can see myself in leadership one day, which is incredibly important to a young man or woman in the service or any organization. But it also sends a message to folks about that we value everybody. And back to the football analogy that I detracted from. If you're building a football team, you would, and this is why I tell people who don't understand this concept. I say, if you're building a football team, if you had everybody on the team was 350 pounds and 6'5", are you going to win any games? No. You need an array of talents and capabilities on a team in order to be effective, because everybody has their own talents. Every team is like that. The data is in. We solve problems that are by being a diverse team. If you get different perspectives, not just not just race is an important one, but socioeconomic background, education level, gender, gender expression, all those things that make you mean you have a perspective. And when you're tackling a problem, all those perspectives allow you to triangulate the good solution. That's what it's all about. So what would I do? Make sure my team is a team of people that are going to give me perspectives I don't share. It would be silly of me to hire a bunch of people that looked, sounded like, and were raised by me. I'd be derelict in my duties. So.
I went to OU.
Yes.
Can I come from OU?
Yeah. So and honestly, finding people who disagree with you to be on your team as well. People that may not share my opinions. People that are going to challenge me. I had some really important jobs in the Air Force that sometimes the gray hair came from the challenging people around me, but you need people to challenge your assumptions and to point out your biases, to illuminate your blind spots. We all have them. Anybody who says they don't have one is fooling themselves, and they're probably a bad boss. So that's a really long way of answering your question. I think diversity matters. DEI was always a good thing. We're gonna have to rebrand it and come up with a new name, but I can't wait for it to be a good thing again.
I have a word for it.
Yes, sir.
America.
Right.
There you go. Absolutely. They're weaponizing things like woke and DEI. It's
so stupid. I gotta say, that's just stupid.
It is. It's crazy.
How can DEI be weaponized? That throws me.
They weaponize God.
People fear that they let their insecurities rise to the top, and people get a sense of entitlement, right? So, and we're all guilty of this, right? This is one of those normal human tendencies, and the best among us recognize when we're failing to live up to our values. And when I was competing for a job, if I didn't get it, in fact, the first time I went to one of those boards, I wasn't competing on it. I was a helper, so because I was below, and I was in a point in my career where I was starting to wonder, am I going to get to go as high as I thought? I was starting to be disgruntled because I felt like I wasn't getting a fair shake, which is a funny thing for a very successful white guy in the Air Force to be complaining about. But I kind of felt like maybe this is going to work out. Did I get screwed over? And then I got to watch the process happen. I'm like, no, that's not it. These are amazing people, and I'm honored to be among them, and I feel lucky to be in this room. So I would say I had insecurities, but there was a sense of entitlement I had that was erased once my eyes were open to how it really works. And sometimes that's what people need, is they need to peek behind the curtain. And that's what the DOD has robbed us of. They made those, if you watch the terrible 30 September Quantico speech where the President and the Secretary of Defense slapped the face of every African American in the room, slapped the face of every woman in that room, insulted them, accused them of getting to where they were based on quotas and other unfair practices, the people that watched that happen and weren't alarmed need a lesson on what DEI really is. We need to peel back the curtain, but nobody wants a long conversation. They want a bumper sticker, right? What does a bumper sticker say? I think Dr. Grady said it best. America.
I like that. Thank you.
Anything else? I know I've talked longer than you probably ever wanted
Can
to.
I ask one more? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
This is scary. AI, data centers.
Yeah, so those are two topics. I'll start with the second one. Data centers that suck energy off of our grid, raise the prices of our energy, increase pollution, soak up water for cooling are something we treat very, very carefully. I think if anybody wants to do that in my backyard, they better have a ironclad way to mitigate those things so it doesn't adversely affect me.
So you're not a supporter then?
No,
Thank God.
no, and so that brings me to my second point. AI is, unfortunately, it's here. Some of it is nonsense, flash in the pan, making cartoons. Some of it might be useful, but we should all be suspect of it because it's not intelligent. Humans are barely intelligent. A machine is less so. And I'll give you a story and an example that I will admit to have tinkered with ChatGPT when I was a professor at OU because I wanted to understand it because I knew my students were using it. And as I was approaching my campaign, I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could get this thing to create a document for me? So I took my Air Force biography. And I entered it into ChatGPT, and my instructions were using my Air Force biography and anything you can find out about me online, because I'm a Googleable guy because I had high-profile jobs. Write a biography of me that would resonate with regular people, non-military folks. Basically, turn this from military speak into non-military speak. I hit a button. 3 seconds later, out came like 2 full pages, single space of my biography. And I started reading it. And holy cow, it was amazing. It was basically the speech I gave you before. Born to 2 Air Force veterans and gave the whole story, married his high school sweetheart and all that. Flew F-16s until one fateful day when he had to eject from his F-16. I went... I've never ejected from an F-16. So it almost had me, and then it made a fatal error because it's not intelligent. All it does is take words and pile them up next to each other in a way that it seems to make the most sense out there in nature, which means garbage in, garbage out. And as AI continues to produce nonsense for the internet, the pile of garbage its references to make its answers gets bigger, and it makes worse decisions. So I think it's going to it's going to collapse.
Like
no, it won't. But and they're working hard to fix that. But I fear that in the time being, we're going to suffer. What you see on the internet can't be trusted.
Do you think it should be regulated strongly?
Certainly, I think if you publish anything, so what people do behind, with a computer behind the scenes, I don't think I should be controlling. But if you are using it to create,
so they all say that there's a 25% chance that AI will eventually come kill us all.
I mean, I have a robot that vacuums my house, does a heck of a job. So if you strap a machine gun to it, that's basically the Terminator version 1.
Do you think it's not it's not that big?
I think it's a threat, but I think we owe our economy and business the opportunity to do the right thing before we shut it down, because there may be a breakthrough about to happen. For example, if they are taking AI and having it tackle problems of developing new medicines, which is something they're doing. They're taking giant supercomputers and pouring information.
Doctor, and he, let's just say he's not that impressed with it yet. But they are. But humans, look at the Nobel Peace Prizes. They're doing great things with AI.
Right. So I think there's a balance there, and I'm not an expert on AI, not yet, but I think it's something we should watch, and I think we should watch it for 2 reasons. One, because of the potential environmental impact and economic impacts, but the second reason is if we are making decisions without humans being involved, that's dangerous territory. As a guy who flew an airplane where there was literally the button I pushed to drop a bomb, I was consenting to drop the bomb. I didn't drop the bomb. I consented. The airplane did the math. Well, that's what I wanted, because its math was better than my math. I can live in that world.
I know computers are fine, but we're talking about a whole other thing. So anyway,
okay.
Okay.
I will stick. If there's anybody who wants to chat privately, I'll happily stick around. If you didn't see it, there's a sheet in the back next to your sign sheet. If you are interested in being on my list of people I reach out to, or you'd like to volunteer for the campaign, please leave your information, or you can go to my website and fill out the little form there. I'm going to need deputy, assistant, under secretaries of campaign managers in every county. I'm going to need you volunteers. If you are passionate about this, you think I'm worthy of your time and effort, I welcome you. I will need your help. So thank you very much, everybody. For